Hello, everyone. I'm Michaela Parker, founder and executive director for the Alliance for Data Science and AI, or ADSA, or ADSA. I'm here to welcome you to our Listen and Lunch AI webinar series, where we bring you experts from around our community to share their approaches to incorporating AI in teaching and research in education. Today, we are welcoming Claudia Roda, who will talk with us about educating for responsible AI, human rights as a foundation. But first, a quick reminder that this event, like all ADSA events, is governed by the ADSA Code of Conduct, which you can find linked at this QR code, and it's also linked in the footer of our website. And briefly, for those of you on ADSA, we are a community of data science and AI practitioners and educators who believe in a just, equitable future where data science and AI are thoughtfully applied in all domains for the benefit of all. You can learn more about our events and activities at our website, which is linked at this QR code, and there's also the URL on the slide. But as I mentioned, today we are welcoming Claudia Roda, Professor of Computer Science, Director of the Master's Program in Human Rights and Data Science, and former Dean at the American University of Paris. She holds the UNESCO Chair in Artificial Intelligence and Human Rights and serves on the European Steering Committee of the Partnership on AI. Recently, she has been a member of the Research Advisory Board of the International Association of Privacy Professionals and of the European Commission's expert group establishing the first general-purpose AI code of practice. She is the recipient, with Susan Perry, of the 2025 UNESCO Uzbekistan Prize for Scientific Research on the Ethics of Artificial Intelligence. So, welcome, Claudia. So nice to have you join us.
Thank you so much, Michaela. I hope you can hear and
Yep, we can hear you just fine. And before we begin, let me just set the stage a bit for our audience. So, as many of you know, the rapid advancement and adoption of data science and AI technologies is raising urgent questions about data rights, accountability, uses. Claudia joins us today to share her perspectives on the competencies and frameworks that help students engage responsibly in this evolving ecosystem, drawing on her work in privacy education, international governance, and the development of a human rights and data science master's degree program at AUP, or the American University of Paris. We will discuss how academic programs can proactively prepare learners to participate in the multi-stakeholder efforts needed to build and regulate information technologies for the public good. So let us jump right in, Claudia. From your perspective, what core competencies should data science and AI students develop to engage meaningfully in human rights-centered technology work?
all right. So as I said, thank you. It's great to be here. And okay, I have a special perspective from of the various experience that you mentioned. But I think one important thing is that in order to define core competencies, we need to define what we mean by data science and AI education. And I think data science and AI have been making our life easier. They have also sort of opened up the possibility that we may be able to, what we may be able to achieve in the medical field, in scientific research, and so on. But I think everyone by now is also aware of the many challenges for our society that AI has brought. And so you can think of disinformation with the impact that this has on democracy, mass surveillance, the inappropriate use of predictive system or automatic decision making, and so on. So if we think of this acceleration of the data science and AI have on society, we must also, I believe, rethink about the high level objective of data science and AI education. I think if we at the very high level, data science and AI education shares objectives with many other curriculum, degree, and educational program. We want number one, personal growth, and number two, make sure that our students will be active members of society. But I think at this point in time, we also make sure that we empower our students so that they can shape the way technology will impact society. So we need to ask questions like, what type of society do we want, and how, by shaping technology in a certain way, we will see a difference. So, coming from a technical background, I am really, in computer science, working on multi-agent system for industrial process control. I'm really convinced that interdisciplinarity, which is what we will need in the future, can only exist based on a strong foundation in the discipline. But I think what we currently consider the strong foundation in the discipline is it's missing something. I think for a long time we are giving computer science students very much, and I say computer science students because data science and AI specific education is a bit more recent, right? And but so we're giving them the technology, but we were missing the big picture. So eventually, at some point, we expected our students to reason about systems, the system that they were building as social technical system. I don't think you can talk about security, for example, without having a sense of the social technical system. But we never had found a place in the curriculum where we could frame this thinking. And even human computer interaction, we started researching human computer interaction, and that was about the 70s, I'd say. And it took until the 1991 SEM computing curricula to actually have it officially part of the curriculum. So perhaps what I'm trying to say with this is that many of the issues that we see with current technology, like bias, lack of explainability, lack of transparency, generation of misinformation, unchecked automatic decision making, and you can go on, right? Have existed for a very long time, but they have remained under the radar. And I must say that raising them, especially within technology circle, would just prompt sort of awkward response, right? I think now we really have a chance. First of all, because data science is a new discipline. And so we can include the big picture in data science as we define what that curriculum should look like. And second, because AI, it's actually an amplifier of the problems that we have had so far. So that makes them very, very visible. I don't know, if you have a system that recommends doctor jobs for men and nurses jobs for women, well, that it's quite clear that it's biased, right? But at the same time, it shows that statistics or system design alone are not enough, right, to fix the problem. You may tweak the system so that it gives less bias response, but the problem is really not in the system. It is in the socio-technical system rather than the technical system alone. So you need to have a dialogue um, so that whenever you encounter these type of problems, first of all, you recognize them because they're not always as obvious as this, and second, you can collaborate with people in other discipline to actually think about what the solution may be. And to me, the human right framework, apart from being a collection of more or less respected at this point declaration and laws, it's also extremely interesting because it's a lens through which we can analyze technology impact on society, and that forms the big picture. And also we see that some of the tech law that has been developed in Europe, for example, is based on the European Convention on the Human Rights. The recommendation of UNESCO are based on the Universal Declaration of the Human Rights. So it's already beginning to be part of the system. So why do I think that this is a great lens through which we can think about the development of our program? I think there are there are three things that are important about um, human right. First of all, they focus on human dignity. And human dignity is such a big umbrella, it's such a good way of thinking about what a system may end up doing to the people that interact with the system. And in the second thing that we have uh, in the human rights framework is the concept of effective remedy. So it's the right to to actually have some sort of remedy to any injustice or infringement on the human right that you may have. Um, this means that when we design a system, we also need to think about how to provide remedy if the system may infringe on human right. And this sounds like a very abstract and very far away. How do I implement something like that? It's just, and it's not that far. When you really think about it, you have very simple solution. I mean, one stupid example is, and we may have all run into this, is sometimes you have, say that you're calling the hospital and you want to talk to somebody and or have some information, and you have the system that says, dial one if you want this thing, dial two if you want this other thing, and so on. And say that you don't have your choice. Well, a very effective remedy is to allow the user to speak to an operator. I mean, this is the technical remedy. Then you have to think about the process that comes after the user actually speaking to an operator. But sometimes it's tiny little things that you just need to think about and be in the position of thinking, okay, am I giving the user the possibility to actually get a remedy in case of my system not working? And finally, the third thing that I think is really important in the human rights frameworks, so human dignity, effective remedies, and the idea of the fact that exists vulnerable population for which you need to take particular care. The vulnerable population is actually not part of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It's defined in group-specific treaty, but it's basically completely considered part of what the whole framework is, right? So in fact, what we need to do is to recognize that whenever we are dealing with vulnerable population, and by vulnerable population, we think about children, elderly, minorities, person with disability. So what we end up seeing over and over again is that AI enables continuous automatic population scale discrimination. And so what that means that for these vulnerable groups, it become a systematic exclusion. So we really need to think about that when we build our system. So to go back to the core competencies, I think historically we have always considered mathematical and statistical foundation, programming and software development, the technical side. I think now we really need to start considering the complete life cycle and the collaboration that you need in order to look at the complete life cycle. We need to start considering infrastructure, supply chain, environmental impact, because that's where we have lots of human rights infringement. You need to start thinking about the legislation, the regulation, the guideline, the standards that sort of surround our development of systems. So, and all this, in each case, you can actually pinpoint what sort of competency you need in order to be able to make sure that human rights are protected. I don't know if you think of infrastructure and you're designing a system that requires internet connection, but is going to be used by a population that doesn't have internet connection or has very poor connection. Basically, you're excluding them automatically. If you think of where your how the system is going to be employed and there is labor exploitation, then you may want to rethink about what type of system you want to design. And I think historically we never thought about this as being the responsibility of the people who are designing, developing the system. But in fact, we need to do it at this point. We absolutely need to make sure that our students, first of all, understand the problems and then appropriate and be the one that can propose solutions and let other people know that these problems exist. Sorry,
So,
that was
yeah, no, that's a that's a very, very wonderful and thorough answer. And I love the framework you've developed and how you're thinking about that through the lens of the human rights. My next question, I think you've already kind of addressed, is you've listed out the places where there are gaps in the traditional data science curriculum. So I wonder if you can speak a little bit about what would be the practical approaches to teaching through these frameworks, right? If, for example, you took the traditional data science or computer science degree program and then added on all of the different subjects you just suggested, may take 10 years to get a degree. So what are how to approach the practical teaching through those lenses, and how do we enable technical faculty to be able to teach socio-technical topics?
okay. So I like also the question about the faculty because that one is an interesting issue. So let me the one way is in the human rights and data science degree um that we have started at the American University of Paris. We actually have that's an hybrid degree, right? So we intentionally bring together students who have a technical background, maybe a computer science undergraduate degree and or some technical experience in industry, and people who have a legal or social science background. And then they spend as much time in technical learning the technical side of data science and AI as they do in learning human right law, privacy, tech governance, big international issues, and so on. So there, what we see is that um, the interaction between the students, it's actually also a way to um, to have the conversation going in a way that the faculty by themselves maybe wouldn't be able to do it. Okay, so and I think in order to fill the gap, which is mostly, I think, maybe not on the whole life cycle, although so very often we see, you have a course on the ethics of AI or a course on the legal system around technology, whatever. And that's okay, it's good, it's better than not having anything, 100%. But what we really can make the difference and have the students go and be truly empowered is by um, whatever we decide to bring in is to embed it in existing uh, courses so that the students see as they develop a system, see where the problems may come up, right? So in terms, if you basically we want to be able to recognize when a technical system may infringe in human right, we may want to assess what type of uh, impact that system will have to design then some sort of solution that respect and promotes human right. And then we want also them to be able to advocate for it and collaborate across disciplines. So, for example, you can integrate rights impact analysis into software engineering, algorithm design, system courses. So, how different technical choice encode value. Um, we may, for example, have a requirement from a human right impact assessment as part of the capstone projects. We may include case studies of right infringing system in machine learning and AI courses. We can talk about auditing, accountability mechanism, right? So there are many ways in which we can do this. And then we need some practical implementation skills. I mean, these are very practical things. So how do you implement fairness constraints into machine learning models? How do you implement privacy preserving techniques? So differential privacy, federated learning. How do you implement explainability and interpretability methods? These are these are all very technical parts of the implementation of the human right framework. Then you definitely want some sort of legal literacy. Um, I think, but I won't talk much about this because this otherwise I'm going to go. I think with the breakdown of the international relation and respect of international law, standards are going to become a major area where we may have conversation between people who have a technical background and also care about the respect of human rights. At the moment, it's not. At the moment, standards are very much taken over by um, mostly companies that are not particularly interested. But we may work that way in that direction. And then we need them to develop some sort of critical social technical awareness. And again, this can be huge or can be small. Um, you can look at how organizations will make decision about technology and what constraints are there when you work within existing institution. What are the power structure and the incentive systems that are there? Is there a way to change it? So I think there are lots of way to do this, and depending on the type of students you have, the faculty that you have, you can start one way or another one. For example, for us, what really works is interdisciplinary collaboration. We get faculty to work together. I work regularly with my colleague um, Susan Perry, and we come from different. She comes from human rights law, and I come um, computer science. Another thing that works really well is case-based learning from right violation. That one you can just take even if you're very technical, you can read the paper about the violation. You understand it's not very complex, and if you work from that and you discuss it with your students, most of the time the students have much better ideas than we have. They really have a way to asking question and to look at the problems in a different way that helps. And when you have mixed background in a classroom, it really works. And then you need to work with experts in the field and see and let students know how this knowledge that they gain, it's actually really useful.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't want us to run out of time before I get to this next question because I really love it. But I do want to say to anyone in the audience, if you have a question for Claudia, please drop it in the chat and we will try to get end. But this next question is about your book, Human Rights and Digital Technology, Digital Tightrope, and maybe one of the ADSA staff can drop the link in the chat. In that book, you highlight the role of consumer preference in driving the development of more ethical technology. And I love this analogy to the sustainability movement, right? So how can data science programs help students understand public expectations and maybe in some ways drive ethical AI in the same ways that green and sustainability movements were driven by public opinion and public expectations and help them integrate these into system design?
Yeah, I think that's again an historical mistake of our curriculum. So the way we have been teaching our students is that they need to understand the user, right? In the 90s, when we finally got the idea that we had a user, because before we didn't even have an idea that we had a user, but eventually we got that. And so we started saying, okay, you need to understand the user. But in fact, in this case, I think with the situation in which we are now, we can't just understand the user. We need to understand and guide um, the public, the regulator, their expectation with respect to the technology, because very often they don't have the tool to understand it. So what we want to give our students is the way in which they are capable of showing what is possible to do within with with the system, so from the architecture to software and interface, and to make sure that whatever is proposed respects human rights. So to me, there is a sense of urgency at this point. I mean, if we don't get our students to actually be the ones who are able to take on the challenge and demonstrate that it's possible to design technology that is not completely uh, taking over all the freedoms of the user, I don't know who is going to do it. Okay, so and we have so many examples of this. I don't know. There was a case in the Dutch welfare system where they were evaluating profiling user to try and find tax fraud, and that system has generated, this was many years ago. It was 2000, like 10 years ago, 2014, 2018. And this was before the GDPR. This system has generated an incredible um, amount of grief. I mean, there have been families that have been separated by their children because of the type of profiling that was done and everything. And this was lawful, okay? Because the law allowed, but obviously wasn't moral. And the engineers within that designed that system, somehow they must have known. If anybody spoke up, nobody was listening there. And so I think now we are in a new situation in which this type of problems actually are a bit more considered, but we need to move even more in this direction. And Europe has been doing it. The GDPR, for example, the General Data Protection Director has moved in that direction. The AI Act, if we ever get to see the AI Act actually implemented the way, in some sort of way at least, it's gone in that direction. And this legislation are both based on human rights, and they are also, the AI Act certainly has learned from many of examples like the one that I just mentioned. So what we have seen with the environmental movement is that awareness has increased as harm started to become visible, and it was systemic, and you couldn't ignore it anymore. And so I think what we need to do is to make the infringement on human rights that are happening because of the way technologies is owned, is used, is developed. We need to make them absolutely visible. And also at the same time, we have the lack to, we can propose solution, and many of these solutions do not take, like in the case of the environment, many, many years to be implemented. They can be implemented fairly quickly. So I think that's definitely, we need to go in that direction.
Very hopeful that way, right? That we have the ability to move the needle much in this case.
We do.
So we are definitely running out of time. And as there are no questions in the chat, I do want to leave you like 2 minutes to, in case there's something that we didn't touch on. I know we didn't get to one of the final questions. So if there's a point you would really like to make for our audience before we close, please go ahead.
My point is that right now where we stand with everything that we see happening, is we need to intervene. There is not much time that is left to intervene. We have a lot of control that is concentrated in the hands of few private companies in terms of both the infrastructure, in terms of human knowledge. The fact that our computer science students don't find internships anymore unless they use AI, that's so worrying. So and if we explain these things to our students, they absolutely run with it. and they do make the difference once they get into the active working or becoming a PhD students, but they carry that ahead. And so I think we can make a difference.
It's on the hands of the next generation. No pressure.
100%.
Well, it was lovely as always speaking with you, Claudia. I really wish we had more time. Maybe we'll have you back again. To everyone in the audience, thanks for joining and have a great rest of your day.
Thank
Bye,
you,
Claudia.
Michaela. Thank you.
Thank you.